Before I start the tutorial on Tiny Planet, I would like to talk to you about the software that I use. I use Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Bridge, and Adobe Camera Raw. I use this particular photography plan that's $10 a month, and it gives you all the latest upgrades whenever they come out. A second program that I use inside of Photoshop is Neat Image. It helps to remove noise from photos that are taken during the blue hour, at sunset, at sunrise, and the time after sunset. Works really great. The third program I use is a stitching program called Ptgui. I have the Pro version, but there's no reason why you couldn't go with the standard version. The standard version is $153 and the Pro version is $305 or somewhere in that range. This is a tutorial on how to create a Tiny Planet image. This panorama was a 26-shot spherical panorama that I shot with a DJI Mavic drone. In Adobe Bridge, we're going to select all 26 images. You can either click on the first one and go to the last one, hold the Shift key down and click again. Alternately, you can use Control A on a PC or Command A on a Mac. Now we're going to right click on any of the images and click on Open in Camera Raw. When I'm in Camera Raw, I am going to pick one of the images that has a structure in it, that has some sky in it, and that has some water in it. And all of these images were underexposed, and I chose these because I wanted to show you how much you can correct images in Camera Raw. I'm going to choose this image. And what I'm going to do, first I want to show you, see this red area up here? That means this area is overexposed, it's clipped. And the reason I get this on the screen is because on the right hand side at the top there's two boxes on either side of the histogram. If you click the one on the right, it will show you overexposed areas. If you click the one on the left, it will show you underexposed areas, and those areas will come out as a dark blue color. So the first thing that I'll do in Adobe Camera Raw is I click on the Auto button. And that'll make some really good changes to the image. It gets rid of the overexposure. But over here on the left-hand side, you can see a little area that's dark blue. So when you have an area that's underexposed like that and it shows up as dark blue, all you have to do is go to the right, take the black slider and slide it forward until the blue goes away. Whoop, right about there. All right, the next thing I typically do in aerial photographs is I use the dehaze slider. I'll take it up to around 14 or 15. Now that I've done this, I want to match the rest of the images to this particular image. And in Adobe Camera Raw, it's easy to do. You right click on the image that you're working on and do Select All. Then you go back to that same image, right click again and do Sync Settings. This dialog box will pop up. If you've not done anything other than change exposures and things, you don't have to do anything else. If you've cropped anything or you've straightened out anything, you're going to have to click the crop box, which will then give you select any aspect ratio change, any angle straighten change. But we didn't do that, so we're not going to use that. We're just going to take the standard settings and click OK. And when I do that, watch what happens to the images at the bottom of the screen. Bang! They all change so that the exposure of the rest of the images is the same as the exposure of the one that we corrected. Looks good. Now what we want to do is we want to save these to a folder, a specific folder that only these images will be in. So we go up here to the top right and we click on the downward arrow, which gives you a tooltip of convert and save images. So we're going to click on that. This dialog box will pop up and it'll ask you where you want it saved. But before that, what you want to do is make sure that your files have a particular name. I use Panorama with a 6-digit serial number. I start this initially at number 1. Now once you make this change once, you never have to do it again, because every time you open up this box, Adobe will have remembered what the last number you put in and will start from one number up from that. Now you want to make sure it's saved as a TIFF. Now at this point, if your computer is not real fast, you could save it as a JPEG, which would give you a smaller file. I save it as a TIFF, but this particular panorama, when it's finished, will be in the area of about 1,000 megabytes. So that's a huge file. All right, so once we do that, we want to make sure we have checked Save in a New Location. We're going to select the folder. I'm going to go to the directory that we were in, Tiny Planet, and I'm going to go into TIFF files, and I'm going to save it in TIFF files. If there wasn't a folder named TIFF, I would create a new folder by clicking up here and naming it TIFF. So I'll do Select, and then I'll do Save. You have to hit the Select button twice when you're working that way. One opens up the folder, and one sets it as the folder to use. So once we click Save, at the bottom left-hand side screen, I'll show you how. Now that all the images are saved, I click Done, and it brought me back to Adobe Bridge. Now what I'd like to do is open up my stitching program called Ptgui. I have a shortcut down in my tray at the bottom, so I'm going to click on that and open it up. You want to use Project Assistant because this is the easiest thing to use when you're making a panorama. So the first thing it wants to do is it wants to load the images. So I'm going to go to the folder where I have my images, and I am going to select the first image, hold the Shift key down and select the last image, or do Control A on a PC, Command A on a Mac, and I'm going to go to the bottom here and click on Open. Alright, the second step is to click on this little tab that says Align Images, and when you do that, the program will gather the 26 images. It'll now open up the Panorama editor so that we can see what our panorama looks like. So typically there's more things that I could do in here to crop this image or do things like that. But with the 360 image, it becomes a little bit difficult. So for new users, actually just about for anybody, I would just not do anything to change this. Go to the top right and click on the red X to close this out. You'll be brought up to option number 3, Create the Panorama. Click on that, and then you click up here where it says Create Panorama, and the program will create the panorama into the folder where the original files were. Once Ptgui has finished stitching the image, we can close out the program, and you don't need to save the settings unless you're going to want to come back and work on this again. So we're going to go Don't Save, which brings us back to where our TIFF files are located and where our new panorama is, which will be the first file in the directory. So we're going to double click on that to open it in Photoshop. the first thing that we want to do in Photoshop is that we want to crop the image. So what we want to do is go to the crop tool, and we want to choose under ratio width plus height plus resolution. And we want to make sure that the resolution is set as 300 pixels per inch. And you'll see at each 4 corners or 4 center points of this image, there are little handles. So the only one we really need to use is the handle at the top. And we want to drag it down so that all of this area here that is basically has no image information in is out of the picture. Once we've done that, we want to double click on the photo to set the panorama, or to set the crop. Next step is to go into image size, and we want to change this image into a square image. Typically when you open this box, you'll see this little link is highlighted, which means that if I wanted to change this to 6,000 pixels, it'll also change the height to keep the aspect ratio the same, but that's not what I want. So what you do is you click on this link, which unchecks it and takes away these little lines that goes from width to height. And now I can put 6,000 in as the other size of the height, and now we're going to end up with a square image, and this is what it'll look like. Alright, to get to see the image at full height, you want to use Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac, and that'll bring the image up to full height, which is the longest part of this image. So you can see it's really crazy looking, but that's okay. That's what we want. Next step, image rotation 180 degrees. We're going to take the photo and turn it upside down. And the reason we're doing that is we want the sky to wrap around the rest of the image. Next step, filter, distort, polar coordinates. You want to make sure that rectangular to polar is checked. And what this means is it's going to take a rectangular image and turn it into a round one. We're going to click OK. And there's our tiny planet. Nothing else has to be done to it. For me, what I would like to do to it is rotate it. I don't like the fact that this structure is on the left-hand side. So I'm going to do image rotation 90-degree clockwise. I like that better. You'll also notice that there's opaque areas in all 4 corners of the screen. Now there's an easy way to take care of that, and it's something you should do anyway. The image now is on layer 0, and that means that there's more than one layer in there and that we want to flatten the image. So you just go to Layer, Flatten Image, and then you'll see that the corners are no longer opaque. That's it. Now you can just do File, Save As, and you have a lot of choices. You can save it as a TIFF. You can save it in any one of these formats. You could save it as a JPEG. And we'll look at this, saving it as a JPEG, and see the difference between that and TIFF as far as size goes. So we're going to do Save. Save it at its maximum resolution. And it's done. So we're going to go back into Bridge, and we're going to look at this file as a JPEG. It's 22 megabytes. Let's go back to Photoshop now, and we're going to reverse what we did, and we're going to just step back a little to where we go to on the history here to rotate canvas. So now it's still a. All right, we're going to now save it as a TIFF file. And go in here. We're going to select TIFF and do Save. And we're going to replace the panorama that's there. Click Yes. Save it as a non-compressed image. See, it says increasing layers will increase the size. You can do OK, because I forgot when I went backwards that I had to do Layer, Flatten Image. And now when I close it, it'll save it again. We go back into Bridge, and we have our JPEG Panorama, which is 22 megabytes, and our TIFF Panorama, which is 231.77 megabytes. So you can see there's a huge difference. If you're never going to open up the Tiny Planet again and work on it, you can save it as a JPEG. It won't hurt anything. Makes it easier to post and things like that. So that's it. That's the end of our tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed it.